It's the most wonderful time of the year. Isn't that how the song goes? It's the happiest season of all. I got you all going now. You got those little earworms going now, don't you? Yeah. I was glad to hear this morning the coordination of the Holy Spirit between Guy Stone and this message. And he talked about the beginning of Christ's ministry on earth. He called it the earthly ministry. It's interesting because you say, well, what other ministries did he have? Does he have? Where is he in history doing what? And then again, Mr. Stone, I'll call him Mr. Stone this morning. He mentioned the Old Testament and the New Testament. In this morning's songs, several times, with Charmaine working with the Holy Spirit as well, I guess, I would suppose. We spoke about the songs of the angels, proclaiming the birth of Christ. Now, when did that happen? 2,000 years ago. It's the happiest season of all since then. When did Christmas begin? You know where I'm going with this, past, present, and future. You know where I'm going. There's more to Christmas than just the beautiful trees and the lights. I don't know about you, but when I grew up, Christmas was okay. You know, Christmas season, I remember coming down the stairs and seeing lights, and it was just a lot of fun time. It was really an upbeat time for us of the year during that time. And we see now what's going on in the world, and yet we still celebrate this day. I'm really happy to see snow on the ground, not the 10 degrees, but the snow. There's no wind out there. It's beautiful. We look around, we have the tree up, red and green, and everybody's dressed in red and green. But Paul said this in 1 Corinthians 2, "No eye has seen, nor ear has heard, nor the heart of man imagined what God has prepared for those who love him." And then on in 2 Corinthians chapter 12, he writes about the things that he saw in heaven and the things that he heard in heaven, and he could not express them. Now, I don't know about you, sometimes I would like to get a little bit more information about the New Jerusalem and what's happening in eternity future. It's very interesting that we don't get much detail on eternity future. We get some. We get a lot about what happened in the past. We get some about the present and things that are going to get worse, and then the tribulation. So we've got those details. Then we have a little bit of less, I would say, for the millennium. We have some good information for the millennium, but not a lot. And then even less as you get into eternity. Because no eye has seen it, and no ear has heard it. Okay, God, so you've got this great gift wrapped up for us for Christmas. And we don't know what it contains. We've lived through some centuries. We've lived through some of our life. And my mom and dad, or your mom and dad, or we can buy gifts for people who, we know what this child is like. And we're going to give them this, and we give them that. We're going to give something what they need. And God has given us Christ. But what is all involved in that? Past, present, and future. There was a time in the past when the triune God set out his plan for Christmas. God Elohim. He created. He said, "Let us make man." And so Jesus has always been. I don't think we have to really argue that point, do we? But we do want to emphasize that Christ has always been. And at Christmas, we put him in a manger, and that's where he stays sometimes, the little babe. And that's okay, but if you look at the chapters of him being a little baby, you get a couple few. In John 1, in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. He was in the beginning with God. All things were made through him, and without him was not anything made that was made. He was a creator. In him was life, and the life was, here's the Christmas story, the light of men. The light shines in the darkness, and the darkness has not overcome it. There's the Christmas lights. Colossians 1:16, by him all things were created in heaven and on earth, visible and invisible, whether thrones or dominions or rulers or authorities, all things were created through him and for him, and he is before all things, and in him all things hold together. And the word there before is, you can talk about time there, but it's preeminence. He is above and ahead of everything. And so in him all the thrones and dominions and rulers, and remember, even darkness was created by God. He created the darkness. The darkness was there before the light showed up. But in the book of Isaiah, he says, I create light and I create darkness. Not evil. He creates darkness so that he can show to us he has overcome. The Lord will even say, he has overcome the darkness. He's the light of the world. Now, in the book of John, which the gentlemen are going through on Tuesday, I did another, just a short search. And the word eimi in the Greek is I am. And the word eimi just happens to be in the book of John 24 times. Sevens. 24 times. Now, a couple of those are a little different, but the eimi is in there 24 times. I am. Now, we kind of get caught up in the sevens, the 7 I ams. I am the vine. I am the true vine. I'm the door. I'm the way, the truth, and the life. I'm the good shepherd. It's interesting, 5 times it says in there, I am he, or I am. Now that's in the English, and the reason I'm pointing this out is when you translate, we have to, in the English, we have to add words. And we kind of lose what is really happening there. Eimi in the Greek means I am. And we want to say, well, I am when he, like for instance, when they came to arrest him, Jesus said, I am. But we in the English said, I am he. Who are we looking for? They're looking for Jesus, and he says, I am he. But he doesn't say that in the Greek. He says, I am. We kind of focus on before Abraham was, I am. But there's many more times in John where we just ought to settle it down to I am. And we remember that we take that back to the Old Testament, the First Testament. And Moses asks, who should I say send me? And he said, Yahweh said, I am. Tell them I am sent you. You see who Jesus is claiming to be. He has eternally existed. So let's see if we can get a decent definition of Christmas. And I think the Oxford Dictionary, the Oxford English Dictionary has a pretty decent one. The festival marking the birth of Christ, celebrated by most Western Christian churches on the 25th of December, Also, more generally, an extended period, including the days immediately before and after the 25th of December, commonly devoted to festivity and celebration. Lights, and I've added this, lights and trees and food, got to be food. And gifts, got to be gifts, especially for the children. And the songs are crucial. The light is crucial. There's plenty of lore and myths. Santa Claus and Rudolph. And those are all fun for the kids. We've made it fun for the kids. Let them have that as long as they get Jesus first and more prominent. But we know the meaning of Christmas. It is Jesus. He is the reason for the season. And Jesus always was. So when did Christmas begin? And again, I'm not meaning when the first tree was hung up, or when the first wreath was hung up, when the first Christmas lights were hung anywhere, or even when the first Noel was sung by the angels in the book of Luke and the book of Matthew. The song is correct. The angels did say it was the first Noel. It was the hark the herald angels sing. It was their time to rejoice in the birth of Christ. But the idea of Christ was well before that. Well thought out before that. It was well thought out before Queen Victoria credited with the Christmas tree in England in the 1840s, the Germans who brought the evergreens into the homes and decorated them with candles and other things. And even before St. Nicholas of Antalya in Turkey, who was a real gentleman, a real Christian it seems, gave secret gifts. Even before the church in the 300s began celebrating a day, which there's nothing wrong with celebrating a day of Christmas. I lean toward the spring, the lambs outside, but it doesn't matter. If we celebrate a day together, it's a good time to do it when it's dark outside. So, well, I must mean when the disciples, when they celebrated Christmas right afterwards. That's not mentioned. There's no date given. They talk about the birth of Christ and his coming, but they talk about the death and the resurrection more than anything. The birth of Christ, the manger, gets a few verses. They don't even mention celebrating these things, except by the Old Testament feast. Luke and Matthew do a fair job, but they don't do a date. They don't give us a date. And then, think about this, even in their time, there was only a small number celebrating Christ. It wasn't the world. So maybe it was David or Solomon who celebrated Christmas, or maybe Abraham or Noah who brought this idea about and gave us this joy. I hope that it is in your hearts. Not even them. Why did it come in the first place? Whose idea was it? We know it was God's. It takes us back to Genesis chapter 3, doesn't it? Where darkness entered the world through Satan and through Adam and Eve. Death reigned from Adam on. It reigns from Adam on over all mankind. The ratio is 1-to-1. One birth, one death. It was then, in Genesis chapter 3, in the darkness of time, when what they call the proto-evangelican, the first announcement of the gospel of Christ, where the seed would crush the head of Satan. A seed was to come. So the light would come But even then, it was announced before that. When God and the triune God in the heavens planned this long ago, that the seed would come and be born and die, and Jesus voluntarily, look at the Garden of Gethsemane, when he didn't want to go to the cross, in that he didn't want to face pain and especially the rejection of his Father. Remember, why have you left me, Jesus would say. He departed, God, from that dead body. It says Jesus didn't want to face that. He took the sins of the world on his shoulder. And he didn't want to bear that before his God, his Father, but he wanted to do it for his Father. That was the Father's will. And he wanted to do it for you and me. We cannot conceive all that event has brought. Paul says that. Eye has not seen, ears not heard. We really have not begun to grasp all that comes from that death that goes back to the birth. But we know this. Whatever it is that's coming, it cost his son his life. It cost God everything. If God was playing cards, he is all in. Darkness is in the world. I would say the world is a dark place. The world is dark. In Genesis 1, he introduces light. And the light comes as a separator. And in our present darkness, he continues to bring light to us in a huge part of, it's a huge part of every Christmas. And I would say, as again, Gary has mentioned this morning, Hanukkah begins today. And I am convinced that Hanukkah is an 8th feast. It will be celebrated again. I believe that between Yom Kippur and Hanukkah is 75 days, and blessed are those who wait out the 1,335 days. That is Hanukkah, I believe, with all my soul. Read Daniel chapter 8. And so, Isaiah 49, and he said to me, you are my servant Israel, in whom I will be glorified. He says, is it too light a thing that you should be my servant to raise up the tribes of Jacob and to bring back the preserved of Israel? I will make you as a light for the nations, that my salvation may reach to the end of the earth. He creates light in Genesis chapter 1. It's the first thing he creates because everything is dark. And then chapter 3, we have the fallenness and the darkness on the planet. And then in chapter 12 and 15 and 17 of Genesis, you have Abraham, and the seed begins. Chapter 3, 12, 15, 17, and on. And so that seed was to come through a certain people, and that's Israel. And Israel was to be themselves, that tribe of people, if you will. They were to be a light to the nations. They were to bring the light to first Jacob and then to the nations. And of course, we know that they failed that. Israel was to be the light. But in Acts 13:30, Paul says this, but God raised him, Jesus, from the dead, and for many days he appeared to those who had come up with him from Galilee to Jerusalem, who are now his witnesses to the people. And watch, we bring you good news that what God promised to the fathers, Israel, this he has fulfilled to us, their children, by raising Jesus. And also it is within this second psalm, you are my son, today I have begotten you. And so Paul, Jesus brings the light. The light is given to Paul and the apostles and to the church. And now it's propagated on the planet continuously again. So the Jews were jealous. And Paul continued in verse 47 of Acts 13. For so the Lord has commanded us, Paul, saying, I have made you a light for the Gentiles, that you may bring salvation to the ends of the earth. And when the Gentiles heard this, they began rejoicing and glorifying the word of the Lord, and as many as were appointed to the eternal life believed. So that's present day. That's the light that continues right now. That's why this building is full of light, but not just because of these little twinkling bulbs, but because of the gospel that is preached here and lit in the hearts of everyone who is here. Israel dropped the ball. They were to be the light, but it was picked up by Jesus, of course, passed on to Paul and the church. The light had come to Israel, but they rejected it. But remember what 2 Timothy 2:13 says. We may be faithless, but he is faithful. And so, we go to Isaiah 6, and this is some of my favorite Christmas passage, actually. And I just want to put this up first, but I want to make a case that this is not present. This has not happened. For to us a child is born. You can suggest, yes, that begins there, but watch. To us a son is given. Their government shall be on his shoulder. Is there a government on his shoulder today? No. And his name shall be called Wonderful Counselor, Mighty God, Everlasting Father, Prince of Peace. Does the world celebrate that today? No. Of the increase of his government and of peace there shall be no end. Do we have peace? No. On the throne of David and over his kingdom, to establish it and to uphold it? No. With justice and righteousness from this time forth and forevermore. Is he on the throne? Do we have justice? No. But the zeal of the Lord of hosts will do this. Now, we sing songs according to these verses, and they're lovely, and I think we probably bring it up every Christmas, and I really, really like these verses. But there's more hope in this than there is it being settled. This is not settled. Let's go to the past. Verse 8, chapter 8. The Lord spoke to me again, to Isaiah, because this people, Israel, has refused the waters of Shiloh that flow gently and rejoice over Rezin and the son of Remaliah. Therefore, behold, the Lord is bringing up against them the waters of the river, mighty and many, the king of Assyria and all his glory. And it will rise over all its channels and go over its banks, and it will sweep on into Judah. It will overflow and pass on, reaching even to the neck, and its outspread wings will fill the breadth of your land. Oh, Emmanuel. He's talking to his son. He's talking to Jesus, who is, oh, Emmanuel. He's Emmanuel. Now, in the English, we see Emmanuel in Isaiah twice. The name mentioned twice. However, it's actually there 4 times, if I remember right, 4. But here's the key. They refused Shiloh. Now, some people want to call Jesus Shiloh. That's not what this this actually is. You can if you wish. But the waters of Shiloh mean gently flowing. That's what that means. But because they did not want the peace of God, They did not want the gently flowing rivers of God, water of God. They're going to get the mighty waters of the river Assyria. Assyria. Remember, I want to remind you, God gave Ahaz a promise. He said, ask what you will. It'll be done unto you from the highest of the heavens to the lowest of Sheol. Ask. And Ahaz said, I will not tempt the Lord. And so this is supposed to happen 65 years later. But the Lord brought it 65 years sooner. Remember, unto you a virgin will be born. Remember that? That's in Isaiah chapter 7 before this. So the virgin is promised to have a child. We'll get to a little bit more of that now. In verse 11, for the Lord spoke this to me with a strong hand upon me and warned me not to walk in the way of this people, saying, do not call conspiracy all that this people calls conspiracy. Do not fear what they fear, nor be in dread. But the Lord of hosts, armies, him you shall honor as holy. Let him be your fear, and let him be your dread. And he will become a sanctuary and a stone of offense and a rock of stumbling to both houses of Israel, and a trap and a snare to the inhabitants of Jerusalem. And many shall stumble on it. They shall fall and be broken, and they shall be snared and taken. And it looks like God is taking the people who were to be the light of the nations to the nations. He's taking them out, and he's judging them because they did not fulfill their work. But then he says, God to Isaiah, bind up the testimony, seal the teaching among my disciples. There's a remnant. There's always a remnant. I will wait for the Lord, Isaiah says, who is hiding his face from the house of Jacob, and I will hope in him. Behold, I and the children whom the Lord has given me are signs and portents in Israel from the Lord of hosts who dwell in Mount Zion. Stop there for a second. If you go back and read chapter 7, you will find out that Isaiah actually is the father of these children, that the virgin who is going to have a child is his wife. And you find out in the first part of chapter 8 that this prophetess, he calls her, has a child and names her Malahasha. I can't even say it. I don't even want to say it. Has two children. And so he's talking to that those two kids that he has, and if you look up their names, they mean something prophetically. Those two children and Isaiah and the prophetess are signs of what is to come. They're promises. And when they say to you, inquire of the mediums and the necromancers who chirp and mutter, should not a people inquire of their God? Should they inquire of the dead on behalf of the living? To the teaching and to the testimony, if they will not speak according to this word, it is because, watch this, they have no dawn. The light is out in Jerusalem amongst the tribes of Israel. Now we know why a light must come. They will pass through the land greatly distressed and hungry, and when they are hungry, they will be enraged and will speak contemptuously against their king and their God, and turn their faces upward, and they will look to the earth, but behold distress, and here it is again, darkness, the gloom of anguish, and they will be thrust into thick darkness. There it is again. But now we get to chapter 9, our Christmas story. But there will be no gloom for her who is in anguish. In the former time he brought into contempt the land of Zebulun and the land of Naphtali. Before Jesus came, that was the situation. That was the past. God had a plan. They rejected the plan. Darkness came to not only Israel, but the entire world. I would say that there's a remnant left, but little lights here and there. But everybody, the whole world, was in darkness. But he was not done, he says in chapter 9. There's not going to be any gloom there. My plan is still being carried out. That was 2,000 years ago. All the trouble that Israel would face The wars and the disasters, the famines, the earthquakes were foretold because there was no light, because they rejected the light. Their dispersal to the nations, it just got increasingly worse for them because at 70 AD, even after Jesus came, they rejected the light again, and he dispersed them to the nations. And so when we carry on, we see in the end of verse 1 there, watch, now we come into the present. But in the latter time, he has made glorious the way of the sea, the land beyond the Jordan, the Galilee of the nations. The people who walked in darkness has seen a great light. Those who dwell in the land of deep darkness, on them a light has shone, as Matthew has said. Now we're in the present. When Jesus came, verses 1b and 2 were fulfilled. And of course, we know that the rest before that was already past. So where are we at? We've seen the past, and now we're in the present. And Jesus Christ is the light to the nations. Of course, we know that Israel continues to reject her, and the world continues to reject her. God had Christmas in mind even before all of this, and even before it's stated in Matthew chapter 4 and Luke 2, and even before it's stated in here and Isaiah 42 and 49, because of the darkness that came because of the rejection of man. Christmas was always coming, and then it came. And that's why we are here today. And so I'll leave you with this. John chapter 3, verse 19. This is the verdict. The light has come into the world, and people loved the darkness rather than the light because their works were evil. And so here we are. That's the situation that we're in. Now, I don't know about you again, but when Christmas comes and the trees start going up and the lights start going up and the songs start happening, it's like a change in our hearts. It's like a change even physically in the church, but even amongst people. I think, I've told my wife this last couple of days. I drove long to get home before the next storm. I was cranky. I've already apologized to her. And don't we just get crankier? I've heard this, that when we get older, we get crankier. I don't want to do that. I hope that's not the case. It's happening to me. You know why? Because we're not done here. Because this is lovely. You guys your faces are lovely. This is wonderful. Christmas is nice. But it kind of reminds me of something. You know, when the high priest went into the temple, when did he go into the temple to sacrifice for the nations? How many times a year? Once. He went once. And they were to mourn before that. But when that happened, they were to rejoice. And it kind of reminds me of that sometimes. Like when Christmas comes, yeah, Thanksgiving is wonderful too. So there's maybe a couple times. But we should remind ourselves, in fact, this is the gospel, the good news. We need to carry this joy out through all the year. That's why the church is here. And I love it when we come here and people greet, and smiles and laughter, and Dan is cracking everybody up. We need to carry this joy through all of the year, because Christmas was thought about long ago. But the ramifications of it are still in the future. Eye has not seen, ear has not heard what God has in store for those who love him. Lord, we love you and praise you and honor you. We worship you this morning and are very thankful for the first Noel. Please stand and let's just sing this. The first Noel, the angel did say, was to certain poor shepherds in fields as they lay. In fields where they lay tending their sheep, on a cold winter's night that was so deep. Noel, 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 born is the King of Israel. Merry Christmas.